Ladies and gentlemen, the theme selected for deliberation in this session is Importance of Secure Oceans and Emerging Trends in Shipping and Port Operations. The significant event is being hosted and organized by National Institute of Maritime Affairs.
We are grateful to Admiral Retired Shahid Karimullah, 𝐄𝐦𝐤𝐧𝐠 Military, 𝐶𝐸𝐺, former Chief of the Naval Staff, for gracing this session.
The program of Day 3 of the conference is as flashed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have Vice Admiral Retired 𝐓𝐻𝑒𝐻 Ahmed Rao, 𝐻𝐸𝐤𝐧𝐠 Military, as the moderator for this session. Vice Admiral Retired 𝐓𝐻𝑒𝐻 Ahmed Rao commissioned Pakistan Navy in 1970 and was awarded with the Sword of Honor. He has served as a naval attaché in the Beijing, China. At the end of his service, he was appointed Manager Director of Karachi Shipyard and Engineering Works. He has been awarded 𝐄𝐦𝐤𝐧𝐠 Military, 𝐶𝐸𝐺 Military, and also Pak-China Friendship Medal awarded by the Government of China. Apart from presenting papers at national and international conferences and seminars, he has also written a book on blue economy. We would now hand over the mic to the moderator for this session for further proceedings. Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Admiral Shahid Karimullah, sir, such a pleasure having you as the chief guest for our session. And it is the most appropriate thing, I think, for this session. The theme of this session, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, is secure oceans and then ports and shipping. So first of all, maritime security is the utmost important thing so that there are secure and conducive environment in the seas in which the maritime economy, the blue economy can take its place and it can grow over there. So secure oceans is of great importance, and security in the oceans is much different than security on land. Security on land is dependent on every country, limited area, seas being vast, more than 71% of the planet, and no one country has the control over it. The rules and regulations are also very different. So it has to be a very, very coordinated multinational effort. Only then the seas can be secure, in which the ports and shipping and rest of the blue economy aspects can really flourish. So, and shipping, as the next topic is, shipping has been so important, ladies and gentlemen, that in around 1950, the total seaborne trade of the world was only about 500 million tons, which has crossed 10 billion now. Over this period, population has grown about 8 to 9 times, but GDP has grown even more than that, and seaborne trade has grown much more than both these aspects. So as the population grows or the GDP grows, the seaborne trade grows, and the shipping sector, of course, is the key in all this thing. And globalization of the world economy is primarily because of the seaborne trade and the shipping sector. And of course, ports are most important because so far people live on land only. So all this trade that we have been talking about has to eventually come to land, and ports act as the interface between the sea transportation and the land transportation. So without much for today, we have experts on us. First, the secure seas. We'll have Admiral Javaid Iqbal, the chairman of the boss of the Maritime Excellence Center. Rear Admiral Javaid Iqbal joined. I think the profile is there on the screens. It is better if you can read it directly.
Rear Admiral Javaid Iqbal, 𝐻𝐸𝐤𝐧𝐠 Military, joined Pakistan Navy in January 1988 and was commissioned in the Operations Branch of Pakistan Navy in 1990. The flag officer is a graduate of Pakistan Naval War College, Lahore, US Naval War College, and National Defense University, Islamabad. In recognition of his meritorious service, the Admiral was awarded 𝐄𝐦𝐬𝐧𝐠 Military, 𝐒𝐻𝑇𝐚𝐥𝐻 Military, and 𝐻𝐿𝐴 Military by the Government of Pakistan. Presently, he is serving as Commandant, Pakistan Naval War College, Lahore. Please welcome Rear Admiral Javaid Iqbal, 𝐻𝐿AA Military. He is presenting his talk on maritime security challenges in the Indian Ocean region, a collaborative approach.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Admiral Shahid Karimullah, Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military, Sitara-e-Jurrat, former Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Faisal Rasool Lodi, Vice Chief of the Naval Staff, DG National Institute of Maritime Affairs, flag officers, distinguished guests from home and abroad, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very, very warm good morning. It's a privilege to share my thoughts with this august forum on the maritime security challenges in the Indian Ocean, especially focusing on the collaborative approach. And I intend to cover it in the sequence as shown. Now, the maritime domain is so wide, so given the limitations of the time allocated, I will be very brief. Ladies and gentlemen, the strategic maritime environment in the Indian Ocean is evolving at a rapid pace. This is due to increasing significance for global economy, especially energy trade, and as an important theater of the ongoing great power contestation. This is resulting in rapid militarization of the ocean space with its adjunct challenges. Salient to mention is the ongoing technological revolution in the shape of long-range and lethal unmanned systems, powered by big data and AI, that has the potential to cause disruption in the maritime domain. As these technologies proliferate in future, especially in the hands of non-state proxies in the amorphous gray zone, we may have what is generally described as coming of the maritime hybrid warfare, albeit 2.0. Now, like unmanned cars that will soon be a reality, the future merchant ships shall be going unmanned very soon. And the first transatlantic voyage of an unmanned ship has been successfully demonstrated in June last year. Similarly, the potential of offensive cyber technology to hack and command neutral merchant ships to cause havoc in the maritime commons has also been actively contemplated. Now imagine the maritime security crisis perpetrated by a VLCC made not under command through cyber attack in a vital waterway. Beyond the traditional dimension, there are a plethora of non-traditional challenges that are largely transnational, such as narco-arms, human smuggling, as well as pollution and natural or man-made disasters threatening ocean environment. As regards hedging strategy against these traditional and non-traditional threats and challenges, it is a no-brainer that given the vastness of maritime domain and magnitude of challenges that are transnational and beyond the capacity and capability of a single maritime nation, it is only the collaborative security approach that will carry the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let us dwell a bit deeper. The idea of collaborative maritime security is certainly not new. In recent past, we have seen a number of overlapping organizational structures and initiatives in the Indian Ocean, such as IONS, IORA, that is Indian Ocean Regional Association, SHADE, Djibouti Code of Conduct, Contact Group on Piracy of Somalia, and Combined Maritime Forces initiatives like Task Force 150, 151, and also European Union and NATO initiatives like EU NAVFOR, Operation Ocean Shield, etc. And we have also seen success of this collaborative approach in the shape of sustained anti-piracy operations by CMF-led Task Force 151, as well as by independent deployers. However, the success metric against more latent and recent non-traditional threats, such as counter-narcotics operation, has not enjoyed the similar level of success. An often cited reason is the absence of an overarching regional security framework in the Indian Ocean due to geopolitical fault lines that inhibits cooperation. However, the more important factor is the wide diversity among littoral states in terms of their size and economic capacities, which results in varying priorities. This imposes a serious constraint on the development of a collaborative maritime approach. As you know, almost half of the Indian Ocean states have medium to low human development indices. Capacity building of regional players in material as well as training domain is therefore a sine qua non in order for them to contribute even more meaningfully. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to the proposed way ahead, I would take the opportunity to briefly describe Pakistan Navy's contributions to strengthen collaborative maritime security. To fulfill international obligation of maintaining secure seas, Pakistan Navy is an active participant of Combined Task Force 150 and 151 since 2004 and 2009 respectively under the ambit of Combined Maritime Forces. Pakistan Navy has the privilege of commanding these task forces more than any other participant navy. Pakistan Navy has also instituted regional maritime security patrols since 2018 for ensuring regional maritime security. Pakistan Navy is also an active member of Indian Ocean Naval Symposium and an observer in the Western Pacific Naval Symposium. To ensure safety and security of shipping in the maritime zones of Pakistan, Pakistan Navy has instituted a coastal security and harbor defense force. Pakistan Navy has also established a joint Maritime Information and Coordination Center, or the JMICC, which is an information and fusion center at national level. It is currently linked with 48 national and 7 international organizations for providing a comprehensive maritime domain awareness. Pakistan Navy has laid a special emphasis on the intelligence-based operations against drug traffickers in the region. Accordingly, counter-narcotics focused operations are conducted on regular intervals along with Pakistan Maritime Security Agency and other relevant agencies to deter, deny, and disrupt illicit cargo smuggling. Recently, Pakistan Navy ships successfully intercepted around 6,000 kilograms of hashish worth approximately $8 million in end November last year, which is the largest ever seizure by Pakistan Navy. Our ships regularly undertake overseas deployments to friendly countries far and beyond. Recently, a Pakistan Navy ship and contingent contributed in provisioning of seaward security during FIFA World Cup in Qatar, alongside leading navies of the world. Pakistan Navy is an active contributor to major humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations in the region, such as during 2004 tsunami, rescue of MV Suez crew from pirates in 2011, evacuation of Pakistani citizens and foreign nationals from war-torn Yemen in 2015, and support during floods in Sri Lanka in 2017. In addition, PN ships have also undertaken multiple round the Africa deployment for establishment of medical camps and provision of required assistance. And last but not the least, the flagship event of Pakistan Navy's efforts to strengthen collaborative maritime security is the ongoing biennial Aman multinational exercise, which is in place since 2007. The current 8th edition of Aman, representing record number of participation from over 50 countries, is reflective of our humble but persistent contribution to strengthen maritime collaborative security. Ladies and gentlemen, despite challenges to developing a collaborative approach in the Indian Ocean that have been earlier described, success of Pakistan Navy's contributions is a testimony that much can be achieved through a sustained engagement and progressive building of the trust. The proposed way ahead therefore informs us of an approach whereby we must focus on the low-end threats, which primarily lie in the non-traditional zone. These are the low-hanging fruit, and while they sit at the soft core of the spectrum of security cooperation, they can be very useful in developing camaraderie and interoperability that are essential for progressing to the next level. I shall now describe few tangible measures for consideration. First and foremost, there is a need to link up and strengthen the existing information fusion centers in the region. Information is the first line of defense against non-state actors. Although a beginning has been made, but a lot remains to be achieved. It would be instructive to emulate the level of connectivity and interoperability enjoyed by the air traffic control centers vis-a-vis the white shipping. Regular theme-based exercises by the IFCs need to be conducted to work up the crew. Collection of intelligence has become a challenge for most of the resource-constrained maritime nations as the NSAs have become more sophisticated, operating satellite phones and long-range high-speed platforms. Furthermore, there are challenges with respect to intelligence sharing by the capable countries due to lack of intelligence sharing mechanism and need for taking a lead, especially in the high-impact counter-narcotic operations. There is a need to build trust and institute foolproof measures for intel sharing against NSAs in maritime domain. Despite apprehension of a large number of drug traffickers at high seas, their effective prosecution remains a challenge, largely due to absence of requisite legislation. The drug traffickers and often their boats thus reappear on the scene in due course. This vicious cycle will continue until criminals are not given a legal finish. Therefore, regional players need to work out the desired legislation to put an end to this quagmire. And finally, the most important thing that we can do today is to study, analyze, and fully understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures of criminals, NSAs, and proxies as to how they will use maritime domain in future to challenge and possibly disrupt the global maritime security. The intellectual forums like the IMC today, the state institutions, and the think tanks must devote resources in analyzing these phenomena and translate same into workable and shareable best management practices for all to adopt. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would say that there are no easy or one-size-fits-all solutions to the brewing challenges in the Indian Ocean. Today, the Indian Ocean's traditional status as an international trade highway is more significant than ever before. Great potential exists for the international community and regional organizations to improve international cooperation, to strengthen maritime security, and to create a broad-based Indian Ocean security strategy that is acceptable to all. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, our second speaker of the session is Captain Dr. 𝐶 Leong, Maritime Security Director from Malaysia.
Captain Dr. 𝐶 Leong serves as a Maritime Security Director of Malaysian Institute of Defense and Security and as a maritime researcher for MODEF. He was a commander of diving and mine warfare for Royal Malaysian Army Headquarters. Captain 𝐶 published a few articles which include retention of naval divers in the Royal Malaysian Navy and mine warfare capabilities in Southeast Asia. He holds his PhD degree in management from University of Malaya, Faculty of Business and Accountancy. His areas of studies is maritime security-related issues in South China Sea, deep diving, and mine warfare-related operations. Please welcome Dr. 𝐶 Leong. He is going to be presenting his talk on Maritime Non-Traditional Threats, Southeast Asian Perspectives.
Good morning, everyone, and who are present today. I'm Captain Dr. 𝐶 Leong from Royal Malaysian Navy, currently serving in the Center of Maritime Security in Midas, Kuala Lumpur. I would like to express my sincere utmost gratitude to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to share the topic on maritime non-traditional threat in the Southeast Asia perspective to the prestige audience present today. As what Admiral Javaid have mentioned, he is focusing on Indian Oceans. I will bring everybody to Southeast Asia. Let us orientate ourselves the geographic location of Southeast Asia as shown on the slide. And I would like to also highlight some of the busiest sea in the region, namely Strait of Malacca, which is very famous to everyone, Straits of Suda, and Straits of Lombok, which is close to Indonesia. And also, we would like to focus on the big power rivalry in Southeast Asia, who is always having the overlapping claim in the area between countries and also the big power in the area. And lastly, the connectivity for trade in the area between Indian Oceans and also Pacific Oceans. As we are aware, Malaysia Maritime, we have been declared we are the maritime nations, and we categorize it as actually the fact that it's a main nation surrounded by the sea and separated by interventions water between the South China Sea and divide Peninsula Malaysia and Sabah Sarawak. By virtue of the EEZ, Malaysia has been a sea area which is 2 times larger than the land area that you can see on the slide. Furthermore, geographically, Malaysia is in the middle of so much maritime activities which are expected to increase gradually. This is obvious because among the others, there are a number of shared maritime borders and 3 land borders with the neighboring countries, and also increasing number of shipping transiting through Straits of Malacca, which is recorded as over 90,000 ships per annum. The recognitions of Malaysia is ranked 25 in the world most competitive economy, where 90% of the trade come from the seaborne area. And also we are also emerging with the 14 major ports throughout the country between Peninsula and Malaysia and Sabah Sarawak. As a matter of fact, the contribution of the maritime sector towards the growth of Malaysia economy will be more significant as Malaysia aspires to become a full development nations in the 2030 onwards. Ladies and gentlemen, the sea is our life. I would like to highlight that the sea area is our lifeline as the nation surrounded by the sea, and our maritime sector is the key contributor to the country's socio-economic well-being. Therefore, with so many natural resources coming from the sea, the many strategic maritime space to safeguard is in a progressive, complex security environment. The maritime economy activity has also increased tremendously, stretching into the wide spectrum and the importance of the sea, as shown on the slide, namely oil and gas, maritime tourism industrial, fishery and agriculture sectors, shipping and port industrial. The Maritime Institute of Malaysia estimated the maritime sector contributed about 23% of our GDP. To set the environment for us, one of the greatest challenges we face today is the complex global security dynamic. Most nations are currently struggling to fight economic recessions after the COVID, and religions and political differences and unresolved territorial claims, and the most recent COVID-19 pandemic. As these geographic challenges change rapidly, Malaysia also faces new challenges such as the great power politics, the increasing of importance of regional maritime concern, and also the overlapping claim. And lastly, the emergence of the non-traditional security threat, which we'll talk more about it. Closer to home, these are the 5 megatrends for the future, as shown on the slide, have been identified by countless analysts. The global indication of these megatrends are not limited to commercial enterprise only, rather than they have profound and destructive effect to security and defense as well, namely the shift of the global economy power, the demographic and social change, rapid urbanizations, climate change, and also the rise of the technology IR 4.0. For the regional maritime concern, these are some of the items that we will talk about, which I will go through shortly. In the ASEAN Pacific region, it's also witnessed the realignment and structuring of the middle power and foreign and security policies. Notwithstanding the global geographic concern, the defense and security focus from the regional perspective as well. As you can see on the slide, the issues surrounding Southeast Asia region are directly associated with the maritime domain area. For example, the maritime dispute in the South China Sea involving 6 countries from the regions, we acknowledge that there were many verbal exchanges between the government vessels from various claimants' countries. Nevertheless, what I would like to highlight here is that these kind of incidents have been handled professionally, and more importantly, there has not been any untoward incidents out there in the context of water. Additionally, the rise of the big power in the area, especially in South China Sea, poses additional pressure and challenges to the countries surrounding the area. Some of the concerns there are maritime border disputes between countries, maritime border encroachments, the big power competitions, extreme ideologies in the area, ASEAN effectiveness, as you know that we are also part of the ASEAN. 6, we have the ASEAN Pacific shifting to Indo-Pacific, which is a new word was coined lately. And lastly, the illegal immigrants in the area, because we are very close to each other. So things do happen between neighboring countries. For the domestic and non-traditional security threat, I would like to show some of the things is happening in the area. I believe that in order to move forward, the defense community need to evolve in order to maintain a stable maritime regime that promotes our national prosperity and global maritime connectivity. Therefore, non-traditional military issues such as shown on the slide, as known as the non-traditional security threats, should also be our concern as it poses the challenges to the social economic well-being of a country. Being the nation of the most capable maritime force, the Navy, is only natural for the Royal Merchant Navy, Maritime Enforcement, or we call it Coast Guard in other words, and also the Marine Police to be expanded into include managing this domestic and non-traditional security threat. This concept is not new to everyone. It is also practiced worldwide, known as maritime operation other than war, MOTOR, which means the use of military capabilities across the range of non-military military operations. The domestic non-traditional threats are, as shown on the slide, namely maritime pollutions, human trafficking, illegal migrants, vessel hijacking, terrorism, IUU fishing, smuggling of drugs and contraband, sea robberies, and kidnapping for ransom. The National Task Force was established to address the spike of the COVID-19 pandemic in the early May 2020, which was faced by Malaysia. According to the task force operation as from 6th of May 2020 until 31st December last year, the statistics have reported to break down each state as shown on the slide. Cases report which is above 250 cases or more is shown on the red. Basically, the whole country is red. However, if you care to look at it, some of the numbers have even come to thousands. The report is inclusive of apprehensions, seizures of goods without master, expulsions, and so on and so forth. This number is increased on the state where the geographically closer to the neighboring country. That is where the happenings is going on. The challenges. After presenting the necessary geographic environments, we have concluded some of the challenges on maritime security as below. A non-definitions of maritime security, biodiversity losses, and environment degradations, human rights and labor protections, and also the regulations of access to economic resources, especially from the sea, including the seabed and the water above, or we call it water columns. There are also issues that were not yet a factor in the time of UNCLOS negotiations, including climate change and new technologies such as autonomous maritime vehicle, which was not discussed during the formation of UNCLOS. Tackling the impacts of climate change on maritime security poses both legal and political challenges under the UNCLOS due to the overlapping jurisdictions, contests, and sovereignty and competing economic interests in the area. While the adverse maritime autonomous vehicle provide a direct challenge to the UNCLOS, which assume vehicles are crewed and cannot be operated remotely. Exclusive flag state justification is to important principle of law of the sea. However, the widespread use of flag of convenience poses a particular challenge for the maritime security and the enforcement of the law of the high sea, as we have mentioned earlier. Exclusion of the flag state jurisdictions is also an important principle of law of the sea. However, the widespread use of flag of convenience poses the practical challenges for the maritime security and the enforcement of law of the sea and oversea, high sea. The use of maritime gray zone tactic is also a new and dangerous trend in international affairs. States have traditionally project naval power to defend their maritime interests. However, today, some of the countries deploy their coast guard or fishing boats illegally to claim the territory of waters in South China Sea especially, and it harasses the shipping traffic in the area. These gray zone operations are designed to avoid conflict, escalation, and militarization of the maritime dispute, which is very dangerous for everyone. Yet they are fully maritime competition and undermine the UNCLOS and the freedom of the navigation per se. Some of the way forward to address the challenges that I've mentioned earlier: the urgent need to define the maritime security, the new technologies, and the others undefined challenges under the UNCLOS, because everyone is going to use the law of the sea to govern the sea or the area that we are looking at. The government should monitor a new autonomous maritime vehicle carefully and advocate for clarifications of existing rules if there is an increase in the use of the autonomous vehicle for the Piracy Act. The government should take leadership role and work with others to ensure the link between the vessel and the state, which they are registered in a genuine and substantially. No mechanism currently exists to manage the gray zone tactic, which I mentioned earlier, and the leading state have so far refused to discuss this issue. Hence, government should have advocated for a mechanism to manage this gray zone tactic that we have mentioned earlier. Otherwise, this gray zone operation will remain a continuous threat to maritime stability and international security, as well as to global maritime governance region centered on the UNCLOS. Lastly, in addition, government should continue to work with the partners and the allies to protect and to preserve the principle of freedom of navigation, not only in South China Sea, but every region where it's challenged. The Malaysian way of approaching this is at hand. Malaysia, we have adopted the whole of governments and the whole of society approaches to address these maritime non-traditional threats, challenges as stands with the Malaysia Defence White Paper, which we have published 2020. In the context of the whole of government approach, for example, is the formation of the National Task Force in May 2020. It consists of 19 other government agency, enforcement agency to tackle the challenges include the maritime non-traditional threats. In the context of the whole of society approach is focused on our defense workforce. Allow me to flash it first. Which cover the 5 main groups, namely the regular force and the reservists, the volunteer force, wherein veterans, civil servants in the defense, and lastly, the people itself. To conclude, I will offer some takeaways for us to discuss. First, Malaysia, by account to features, is truly maritime nation. Therefore, protecting our maritime interests is a paramount. What we do is to offer influenced by the dynamic of the global geographic environments and maritime non-traditional threats. Assisting the maritime non-traditional threat will remain as a major concern to many years to come. Our nations have outlined a robust and effective strategy to address the challenges, as mentioned earlier, through the Defence White Paper. And with the Defence White Paper in place, Malaysia is seeking to have a stable defence funding from the government, in which allow us to have a long-term planning and a predictable budget to secure stable and funding will allow us to develop a procurement planning that is affordable and sustainable for years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I have come to the end of my presentations, and I hope you have gained some insight on the given topic, Malaysian non-traditional threats in the Southeast Asia perspective. Thank you for your kind attention, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was an insightful perspective.
Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Ahsan Malik, Director of Waterlink Group of Communities, and he will be talking to us about the shipping, and let's see what he has to tell, being from the private sector. Our private sector, especially in Pakistan, shipping has not been doing very well so far, so maybe he can give us some perspective. Thank you.
Mr. Ahsan Malik holds LLB honors and LLM masters from the University of Buckingham. He is on the board of directors of Pakistan National Shipping Corporation and group director of Waterlink Group of Companies. He has served in KPT as well as Port Qasim. Formerly, he also worked on MJM Energy and Resources, coal and petrol products trading. His area of expertise includes shipping, energy, trading, and property development. Please welcome Mr. Ahsan Malik. He will be presenting his talk on challenges in the shipping industry of Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to start with extending my thanks, and I would also like to say Assalamu alaikum to all the dignitaries, delegates, members of the forces, our chief guest, Vice Admiral, our chief guest, Admiral Shahid, Karimullah Sahab, DG NIMA, Vice Admiral 𝐒𝐩𝐩𝐳 Sahab, and members of the business community, all others present over here, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for granting me this audience today. I will be talking about the challenges of our shipping industry from a private sector perspective and how that relates to other stakeholders. The area of focus of this presentation is the energy supply chain. And the reason why I have chosen this topic is because I truly believe that energy is the biggest security factor for any country, especially a country like Pakistan that is heavily dominant on and reliant on energy that is being imported. Our energy comes from crude oil, from LNG, from coal. We do have indigenous local sources that we are developing, and I hope that goes on and becomes a good percentage of our energy mix. But as of today, we are a nation that imports the bulk of its energy and is reliant on imports. And that import is done through the shipping routes, through the shipping supply chain. And if we resolve those inefficiencies, some of the inefficiencies, and we are also able to capitalize on our existing shipping infrastructure, on its utilization, we can make our energy mix and our energy supply chain much better, and we can be operationally and economically efficient in managing our energy. As you already know, energy impacts all of us, from the gas in our cooking stoves, to the petrol in our car, to the gas and other sources of energy that we need to run our industries, to run our Navy fleet, to run our jets, and so on and so forth. So it is a very important factor for any nation. That is the reason why I have chosen this topic. I will be giving a few examples that will show us two sides of a coin about how we are, it will show us why we are inefficient in some ways, and how, on the flip side, by taking some small measures, we can become much better and much more efficient. So, first of all, I would like to just present the impact of a inefficient energy supply chain, or the impact of high energy costs, let's say. So there are three components to the energy supply chain, broadly speaking. One is the product. The product is imported and its price is driven by international markets. That is not something that is in our control. The second are shipping costs, which is something we can control, because a lot of our energy can be transported through the Pakistan National Shipping Company and its fleet, and we can manage our shipping costs in that way. I'll come and address that point later in the presentation. The third part is the supply chain, the berths, the storages, the discharging methods, the pipelines, the connectivities. These three make up the energy supply chain, broadly speaking. So a high energy bill translates into inflation, into a current account deficit, where we face devaluation, where we face inflation because of the devaluation, and that leads us to a certain sort of debt crisis every now and then, and also encourages hoarding, because there is an imminent shortage of commodities and energy products, and that leads to a certain sector which hoards the current inventories and aggravates the situation rather than helps it. So if I talk about the oil import, I'll be focusing on two products in my presentations. I don't want to bore you too much on this Sunday morning, so I will try and keep it simple and not too dry. So I've chosen oil, and I've chosen to speak about coal, to give you an insight and a holistic view about what can be done. So if we talk about oil imports, we have two ports mainly that cater to our oil imports: crude oil, furnace oil, petrol, diesel. All of this comes through Port Qasim and Karachi Port. I'll talk about Karachi Port. Karachi Port has a number of berths. We have OP1, OP2, DB1, DB2. They all discharge chemical, petrochemical, and oil cargoes. So we have multiple berths over there. And most of the time, we'll find that there are idle berths at KPT for discharging oil and related products. However, the storages in KPT are slightly inefficient. They haven't been developed. The infrastructure, the pipeline connectivities has not been done over the last 10 to 15 years. Now, in contrast, if I talk about Port Qasim has very efficient storages. It is linked all the way from pipeline up to Punjab. It has multiple storages. It has a good mix of storages, but it only has one berth to discharge all oil cargoes. So you see how KPT has inefficient storage, but multiple berths, but Port Qasim has one berth and multiple storages. So the problem and the solution are sort of one and the same, in the sense that if we connect the both ports, if there was some sort of connectivity between both the ports, they could benefit of that synergy. They could benefit of that. Port Qasim does not need to make more storages, and KPT does not need to make more berths. A collaboration, a synergy, a little bit of discussions between both the ports will resolve the problem. So without spending much, we will be able to capitalize and increase the capacity utilization of the existing infrastructure. So that is a little example of how we can go about it. Just to give you a little bit more insight, there are vessels that call on Port Qasim. There is empty storages at Port Qasim available, but due to just one berth discharging one vessel at a time, we have up to 5 to 10 vessels waiting for the berth, incurring damages, sometimes to the tune of $100,000 per vessel, sometimes higher. You build that up onto 10 vessels, that's $1 million. And obviously for a country that is working on its foreign exchange reserve, such a situation can be avoided, should be avoided. And there is another port which is not too far away from Port Qasim that has multiple berths. All we need to do is connect them both so we can discharge 4, 5, 6 vessels at one time. We can store our energy, we can be more efficient. Talk about coal a little bit. We are developing third coal, and I think that is a very good initiative. That is something that should go on. It should become a bigger percentage of the overall coal mix. That will help us not be reliant on imported coal, something we should all prefer. However, the reality as of today is that in 2021, Pakistan imported 16 million tons of coal through seaborne routes. And it is expected that with the added power plant capacity and the expansion of the cement sector, this will go up to 25 million tons over the next 2 years. That 16 million tons translates to 290 vessels per annum, approximately. That's 24 vessels per month. And during proceedings of the Supreme Court in 2018, there was a decision was made where all coal imports were destined towards Port Qasim to a single purpose custom built terminal, which is fine. However, that terminal also has one berth. It can only discharge one vessel at a time. The time that that terminal was being built, Pakistan imported less than 1 million tons a year. Now we import 16 million tons a year. The capacity is not enough. The vessels, they wait outside during high traffic season, and they incur again damages up to $100,000 and $150,000 per annum, per vessel per day. I'm sorry, and that increases our import bill. And at the same time, another port, KPT, which is an hour away from Port Qasim, has idle berths lying there that can discharge coal, or a purpose-built terminal can also be developed at KPT, or some kind of railway connectivity can be done so that the discharging from the vessel onto the land and forward onto the factories is much more efficient, and we don't pay extra dollars for our energy. So if I was to sum up the gaps, if you realize both the topics that I talked about, KPT, Port Qasim, crude oil, coal, we aren't talking about any new projects that we need to do. The idea that I'm trying to float over here, I'm trying to give a dissected bird's eye view that we have the capacity within the realm. We just need to have a smarter approach. There is a concept of smart hub or smart port, which basically talks about how ports can talk to each other, how they can share data on one dashboard, and they should use that data to deploy their capital in a much more efficient manner. So in efficient capital deployment, where one port has an existing capacity which is idle, and the other port is spending more money to build the same storage facility or the same discharging facility, is inefficient capital deployment. A little bit of synergy that we can build between both the ports, between the authorities, that will help them deploy their capital in a better way and also make themselves much more efficient by building those synergies between themselves. Another initiative or another drive that we need to focus on is the impact of PNSC, the Pakistan National Shipping Corporation. The Pakistan National Shipping Corporation is a hidden gem that we must focus on. It is one of the it is the only company in Pakistan that charges its freight in PKR. We don't have any other, if we want to pay for our shipping costs in Pak rupees, we don't have any other option except PNSC. So PNSC should be supported to increase its fleet so that it can cater to maximum energy import. Its focus is already on oil and crude oil imports that come into Pakistan. It should increase its fleet. We are trying to increase its fleet. We are talking about how PNSC should be allowed to procure second-hand vessels. It should be exempted from PEPRA rules so that it is able to increase its fleet, and we don't have to pay for our shipping costs in dollars. We pay for them in PKR. In fact, if we build excess capacity of PNSC fleet, PNSC will not only be able to reduce our shipping bill, it will be able to bring in foreign exchange by selling its freight and vessels to the foreign market. Also, if we are efficient and we build the synergies between our ports, we would also be able to benefit from low commodity prices. We all must remember when COVID hit, oil went down to $20, coal went down to $40. China and other countries in the region who had efficient energy supply chains, they bought commodities at very low prices, they stored them, and they benefited off them when prices were high. We've seen this same issue with us in LNG. When the prices are very high, we are unable to purchase them, and that leads to a gas crisis. So that is another thing that we need to focus on. The government's part, obviously, a little bit of activism, a little bit of synergy, sharing data, flow of information. I think platforms like NIMA are a great platform where all of these authorities, stakeholders can get together, share their views, help give a holistic view, a bird's eye view, rather than working in small pockets. We can share our information, we can share the data, and we can help spend less and become much more efficient. Also, incentivizing the private sector, and in the private sector, or I would always say that we should support local companies. PNSC is a great example of how a local company is benefiting us for the same services that we could have taken from international companies. That does not mean that we should discourage international investment or JVs, but local companies should be incentivized to build railway routes, shipping routes, terminals, ports, and multiple of those facilities, so that there is more competitiveness, and less monopolization, and the market should become more efficient automatically once there is more competition. So that would be all for me, and thank you very much for your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. It was an insightful talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, our fourth speaker of this session today is Mr. Louis Braille from 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝑖s, and he will be talking to us about the port operations and the modern trend in the port operations. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis is currently working as the Regional Strategy and Business Development Manager in Thales, Middle East. He started as a business and strategy analyst, cybersecurity, and later on worked as a digital transformation consultant. Then took the position of Regional Strategy and Business Development in Middle East. He has completed his master's from Sciences Po Lille and bachelor's from University of Kent. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Lewis, presenting his talk on importance of secure oceans and emerging trends in shipping and port operations.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to start my talk by thanking the organizers or the organization of this event, which is a great example in hospitality and organization. And so before starting my talk, a very great thanks to the organizers. So distinguished guests, honorable delegates, today I will be presenting giving an overview of different trends in port operations. But before that, I will give also a brief presentation of what 𝐒𝐿𝑖s is and what 𝐒𝐿𝑖s does in the world. So just to start, Thales at a glance. So Thales is a French international company with over 80,000 employees, with in 2021 over 16 billion euros in sales worldwide. Out of these 16 billion, we finance 1 billion euros of research and development going into our new digital technologies, so artificial intelligence, big data, cybersecurity, and IoT and connectivity. And we're present worldwide, so in over 70 countries, and we're very proud to say that we've been present in Pakistan for over 50 years now, and we've celebrated 50 years last year, and I'm here to say that we're very proud of that. So we're covering overall the large markets of digital identity and security, defense and security, aerospace, space, and ground transportation. And in all these critical sectors, our job is in the sensing and gathering of critical data, transmission and communication of this data, storing this data, and processing it for better decision-making in critical moments. So we're also a player in security and port operations, and here's a little glimpse of our flagship projects and some of our systems. So we've been instrumental in the Mwani port in Qatar, where we've integrated all the security operation systems there, giving operators a bird's-eye view of everything that's happening in the port, from security operations to energy management. We're also present of the port of Marseille, where we've set up a collaborative platform powered by blockchain to secure the transaction and their veracity. And we're also present at the port of Antwerp, where we're deployed a cybersecurity solution to secure the transactions between some actors. And one of the platforms that we rely on for these systems is our advanced processing platform, which connects all the operational technology, IT technologies of these ports that can be in many different sites for operators to better detect, understand, decide, collaborate, and report about their operations, security, and energy management. And we're proud to have been awarded in 2021 a prize by Frost & Sullivan's for being the most innovative platform in the industry. So to come directly to the topic about port operations, I'd like to focus on 4 talking points today, and hopefully that'll give you an overview of some of the trends that are going on in the industry right now. And I think it will give a more bird's eye view and complementary view on the previous talk that was very interesting as well. So my first talking point will be about digitization and automation. Second one on energy efficiency. Third one on security. And finally, public-private cooperation. And we'll see that this last point actually provides some insight about how we can handle some of the issues we're having in maybe the first 3 trends. So first of all, about digitization and automation, we have to understand, of course, that ports, most of the ports are capitalistic ventures, and 80% of international trade goes through them. And that means that they're bound by imperatives of operational and financial performance, and automation and digitization obviously play a large role in that operational and financial optimization. So the first step we've seen in the course of the last century is the development of electronic data interchanges. That was the first step, and the installation of terminal operating systems for better cargo handling. That was a great first step, which was followed in the beginning of the 21st century and still now by large automation of cranes and different conveyors. But today we've entered a new stage in automation and digitization, because we're in the era of using new technologies such as artificial intelligence, IoT, and simulation, cloud as well, which radically enhance OT and IT performance. We're able to connect assets, to localize them and maintain them, which gives way to areas such as predictive maintenance. We're moving IT operations from on-premise solutions to cloud solutions, which makes it easier to to use what we need in terms of infrastructure when we need it, which is a lot harder when we have on-premise solution. And one example I'd like to give is also simulation. And I think that's a great way to enhance port operation is the development of digital twins. And there is a concrete example in the last few years in the port of Livorno in Italy. So of course it's a smaller port, and such projects start in smaller scales because they're maybe easier to implement. But they've developed a full-scale digital twin of the port. That means that with the help of LiDARs, with the help of cameras, they've made a real-time digital twin of the port, which means that an operator can actually work from home and see from home all the different cargo, what's in it, where it should go, in order to optimize space, for example. And that has been awarded actually in the European Union by being one of the most innovative projects in terms of digitization and also energy efficiencies. I'd like also to talk about some challenges, however, and some limitations that come when we talk about digitization and automation, is that obviously we're still in a learning curve and we're in a test and learn approach. There is a development of artificial intelligence, and there's a big buzz around it, but we're still struggling to find some real-time use cases for machine learning, even though we're really good at gathering data from the past and making decisions out of that. It's really hard. Unlike the aeronautics sector, unlike the transportation sector, it's a lot harder to use real-time data because of the different data sources that are available. We'll talk about it later, but also one of the key challenges out of digitization is cybersecurity. And also, one last point is maybe the investment, and I'd say that it's also up to the industry to provide the strong business cases to give proof of value. Second talking point I'd like to address is energy efficiency and environmental protection. So it's undeniable today that the extreme economic activities of ports brings about adverse effects to the environment during construction of the ports and during their operations. So we see a trend in reducing emissions and reducing the impact on the immediate environment of the ports. Main trend we've seen throughout the years is electrification, obviously, and the gradual elimination of diesel power equipment and what is related to them. An excellent example of that, of electrification, is cold ironing or shoreside power. For those who are not really familiar with that issue, is the fact that you're able to provide electricity and energy to a moored ship so it can turn off its engines while it's loading and offloading. And that's actually one of the most efficient ways to reduce energy emissions up to about 90% in some cases. Problem with that, with these solutions, is that first of all, they're costly. You can count $10–20 million for the implementation of one. And also, since it's rather new, there is a real lack of international standards in terms of electricity provisioning and cabling as well. So this will have to be tackled. We can also talk about the use of alternative fuels such as LNG, hydrogen. Also, the ports have an estate of their own, and we're seeing gradual use of that estate for renewables such as offshore wind farms or solar power as well. And one last example I'd like to mention is investment on intermodal transport. This is a very long process and it requires investments in infrastructure, but reducing the use of trucks and rather use trains has significant reduction in emissions. The Port of Valencia, for example, has seen a 30% decrease in all of its emissions throughout the last 10 years because it's gradually moved from trucks to trains. We've seen it before, but also digitization is important as there is an undeniable link between automation, digitization, and port energy and efficiency. The problem with these trends is there's many ways to reduce emissions, but that's because they're actually driven by economic imperatives, especially at a time where energy prices are soaring. So what we need to do more efforts in is in actually the protection of the surroundings. And a great example of that is the port of Mwani, Qatar, actually, which has dislocated and renewed thousands of square meters of algae, of corals in Doha. I'll move fastly to conclude, but another trend is trends in security. We've seen that the international understanding of security for ports and shipping is mainly traditional and based around physical and terrorism, but today this is not enough. We've talked about digitization. Today, one of the growing risks in security is handling cybersecurity. We have many more digital assets that are connected to operational technology assets, and we need dedicated security operations centers to manage both IT assets and OT assets. And we need to also train port operators to understand those risks. Just to give an example, the Port of Los Angeles has 15 cyber attacks per second. Last point is maybe the fact that we need to evolve our understanding on tackling organized crime and corruption around ports. And there is no international understanding and framework to tackle that. And lastly, maybe a trend that we need to focus on, and that provides some insights and some ways to tackle the previous problems were mentioned, is more public-private cooperation and collaboration. We need to make this collaboration between private actors, public actors, academia, to make the regulation evolve. We've mentioned electrification, we've mentioned cybersecurity, we've mentioned organized crime. There needs to be an information community for better lawmaking. We need to develop data sharing and common platforms that will be a technical enabler for this regulation. And finally, we need to adopt open innovation strategies and make ports hubs for industry, public actors, and academia to share information together, innovate solutions, and come up with new strategies to tackle these problematics and better take the wave of innovation for port operations. And I think that Karachi provides actually a great platform for that. To conclude, we've seen that port operations and building what we call today a smart port is a very multifaceted topic. And there is no common definition or framework to assess this smartness. And maybe to open up the discussion, maybe we need in different ports to assess, to have KPIs and put in place KPIs that provide a quantitative and qualitative analysis of how smart our ports are getting and how we can evolve further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was a very enlightening talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, the house is now open for question and answers. I would like to request the moderator to take over this session.
Thank you. Gentlemen, whosoever asks question first, please introduce yourself and make your questions brief so that we can take as many questions as possible. Starting from the front row.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Sir, my name is Khalid Hussain, and I'm basically an international trade consultant, and I'm working for two technology companies. I think we have got a very good insight. My question is with Mr. Dr. Leong, sir. You have very importantly highlighted the entities. But I think nobody has just highlighted that with the growth of the business across the globe and development of Blue Sea, the main threat in the global trade, that is maritime frauds. We have spoken about the security, we have spoken about the threats and everything, but nobody has spoken about the law which is prevailing everywhere in the world, and it is associated with maritime frauds along with trade-based money laundering. And what is happening, phantom shipments are taking place. So there is no legal legislature available across the globe, so that if a wrong bill of lading is issued, or if anything which is happening between the countries for trade, there is no legislation. So this was question number one. And my last question is with Mr. Honor Dr. Javaid sir. Sir, thank you for organizing this claim. Sir, with your experience, will you throw some highlight on the risks in investing in the blue economy? Because we speak about agriculture, we speak about industry, but blue oceans, these are our assets. There is trade, there is recreation, there are sports.
I think
so I would request if you
I
can
think we
highlight
can
some.
give more time to for them to respond. And well, request please one question per person, so that we can have as many questions. The time is very limited.
Thank you very much for the question, sir. As I mentioned in my presentation, one of the challenges is we do not have unanimous or country rules and regulation to enforce all this criminal non-traditional trade in the area. The only thing we have is, of course, only the UNCLOS for us to abide to the law. That is one thing about it. Follow on to that, we only can enforce our maritime law in our own 𝐒𝐻𝐃 and our territorial waters. Outside of that, that is the real challenge of everyone, actually. So I would not be able to answer in total, but for Malaysia, we do have our own like Fishery Act, our own Immigration Act, and so on and so forth, to deter things happen within the waters. Outside is very much of international issue, and that have to be agreed upon. Like for instance, we have the ASEAN summits, ASEAN Defense Minister meetings. They are the forums that we can discuss and come out to certain agreement how to handle all these things which is outside of the territorial waters. I stop there, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid. The question is directed at the risks in blue economy. On a lighter side, I would encourage you to try ChatGPT. It's a new buzz thing. And once I, prepared my paper on the maritime security, I just gave it a try. And to my amazement, it was 10% common that what I had written. So coming back to the question, I think there's no practical risks if we consider the blue economy, apart from the reputational risk only. I'm talking from the perspective of Pakistan, because traditionally we have been a land-based power. The sea blindness is the main affliction. We are not, very much into the bounties that the blue economy offers at our doorstep. And there are a number of sectors, in which, because risks come from, they generate from the unknowns. And there are unknowns, there are no unknowns in the blue economy as such. If you take a scan around, Malaysia, Singapore, the Gulf countries, they have invested a lot in the blue economy. And we have seen that, there are immense dividends in the coastal tourism, in the port efficiency, in the offshore, in the energy that they drive from the offshore. So I think that's the simple answer. Apart from the reputational risk, we would be a more maritime power than the land-based power. I don't see any risks. Thank you.
Please.
Vice Admiral retired Khabar Ali. I must congratulate Mr. Malik for a very simple and very insightful presentation. My question is that these low-hanging fruits have been there, and everybody knows that it's so easy if you invest in these shipping, connectivity. So in your, what is the reason that why can't we get our act together? Because at the moment, Pakistan is suffering from a big crisis of current account. And shipping bill is $8 billion. We are importing everything CNF basis. So if we even just make it FOB, we are in a, like Ethiopia has done, is a landlocked country which is really with a flourishing shipping. So what is this way forward in another 6 months, if you can throw some light on it?
Thank you so much for your question. You are right. Why these low-hanging fruits haven't been addressed earlier. That's absolutely right. However, as of today, I'm glad that the current team that is looking after shipping matters or maritime-related matters is much better than any team that I have seen earlier. And I'm not just saying this, I'm saying this because I do interact with some of them. We need people who understand this sector. So you know that shipping is something that is not easy to understand. It is something that has a global footprint. It has something that's happening in China or US will impact trade routes relating to Pakistan. And we, you talked about FOB and CNF. These are all technical points that the common man does not understand. And a lot of times, people who are sitting in the decision-making positions, they don't understand these issues. And if they don't understand them, we can't expect them to resolve them. However, as of today, you might have seen on day one, Mr. 𝐓𝐵 was here and he addressed a lot of issues, and you must have realized that he understands these problems and he's taking them forward. The chairman KPT today, Mr. 𝐓𝐵, he's doing a great job in addressing the port efficiency and the utilization and building new facilities to increase the capacity of KPT. At PNSC, Admiral Javaid Sahab is doing a great job in taking his case to the parliament to try and increase the fleet. So as of today, the reason why I have some hope, and the reason why a person like me has been given the opportunity to share these gaps with you here today, the reason why we've all gathered here in the last 3 days, I've gotten much more hope than I did even earlier, because all of these discussions that have been initiated, they will go on, and once this information is out there and shared with people who are in important positions, who understand the sector more importantly, and are in decision-making positions as well, I believe things will move forward and something better will be achieved. And I would request you all to please keep engaging, and I would also request NIMA to keep having events like these where we can gather all of these thoughts, we can share the progress that has been made, or if any progress has not been made, that should also be highlighted, so that people who are in the position, they are able to address these issues. And I think it will be much better going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, because of shortage of time, we'll have just one more question, and it will preferably, if it is possible, from the rows behind the front row.
If this opportunity is for row behind, I go behind and then attend. Thank you very much. I think it was wonderful session and I enjoyed. Great learning opportunity that has been provided. Mahmood Akhtar Chima, and I'm country representative of IUCN. I have one question. How best can we disseminate this wealth of information that I have received this morning? One, this is a question. The second is humble request from IUCN. We plan to put together Blue Economy portal, digital information that need to be made accessed. We request to cooperate for populating that portal so that we present when you have a next session. Thank you very much on behalf of IUCN.
As far as preserving this wealth of knowledge which we had experienced over the 3 days, number one is that we will be putting up all these papers on our website also, along with the recommendations, after synthesizing all the papers. Secondly, these papers will be published in compendium shape as well, and that will also be available. So that will be shared with you and all the maritime loving communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to the management for the concluding, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, now you will see a brief video of the 3 days proceedings of International Maritime Conference 2023. May I now invite Vice Admiral Retired 𝐓𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸 Military Director General of National Institute of Maritime Affairs for the closing remarks.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Admiral Shahid Karimullah, Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military Star-e-Jurrat, former Chief of the Naval Staff, Command Pakistan Fleet, Sir, General Flag, Air Officers, distinguished speakers, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. A very good morning. It's very encouraging to see a full pack pandal, but because Karachi is not very used to getting up early in the morning, but it's very encouraging that the maritime community has woken up. In the last 3 days, we had 3 marathon sessions, each having 2 subsessions, and total of 28 honorable speakers they contributed, including 14 from abroad. And they all very actively contributed in highlighting the relevant aspects of the blue economy. We have seen the video clip just now, so that was prepared to introduce the 3 days proceedings. So directly I go to some of the very pertinent recommendations given by the speakers. Number 1 was the Ministry of Maritime Affairs to formulate a strategy related to the blue economy, to discover natural resources in the seas and the oceans, and then to explore seabed resources, especially to harness the potentials in and on the coast, and that is the maritime tourism. The developmental strategy needs to incorporate three key elements, and that is internationally aligned maritime legal and regulatory systems. Attract stakeholders to Pakistan in order to stimulate blue economy through tax incentives and human capital services. Create a public-private maritime agency. Establish coordination mechanism with Sindh and Balochistan governments to support and manage the coastal development. Develop national standards for the blue economy risk monitoring as a risk monitoring platform. Strengthen the commitments and the targets made in Pakistan national climate change policy. We need to provide the fishermen and the market competitive salaries and also an alternate profession according to their interest. Establish Marines Spatial Training Planning, that is MSP, sporting laws. Practices of circular economy be adopted as a tool to build a climate mitigation and adoption strategy. Invest in education, training, and engagement to advance blue carbon research and awareness. Improve mapping and monitoring of blue carbon ecosystem. Revival of Gadani is vital to the economy of Pakistan and to the Balochistan and as a province and to Pakistan as well. Engagements with the non-traditional partners such as the Ministry of Defense, Pakistan Navy and private sectors to be increased. A digital elevation model of the whole coastline be done at high resolution to determine the vulnerability index. Coastal assets be protected as per the guidelines of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that is IPCC. Promote community best practices against consistent with the Global Ocean Acidification Observation Network and monitor the ecological impact with industries and project development. And we should study and analyze the common tactics, techniques, and procedures through a collaborative approach to ensure maintaining peace and security at sea. And PNSC is GEM of Pakistan, maritime sector of Pakistan, that needs to be looked after and its fleet needs to be enhanced. To address non-traditional threats, maritime community, which is a weak link, needs to be strengthened and mobilized. Use of digital technologies is essential to address the maritime issues. That was the last speaker which alluded to. All these recommendations given in bold message that custodian of this earth, that is the human being, he needs to alter his course. He needs to think. He needs to think blue so as to make the procedures, practices which are in line with to ensure the sustenance of this planet. As I already said in response to one of the questions, that these recommendations are few, but all the recommendations which have been very pertinent and given by the speakers, along with their valuable data which we have collected today, that will be put on our portal, as well as we will be issuing a compendium on this. At the end, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Admiral Muhammad Khan Niazi, Nishane NIM and SBT, Chief of the Naval Staff, for his resolute support and guidance. At the same time, we are grateful to the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, those who were giving us the patronage, the overall Pakistan Navy, the Commander Karachi, Commander Pakistan Fleet, and the Badr Expo for their wholehearted support. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that all the foreign dignitaries, those who came here, must have had a pleasant stay. We are extremely grateful to all moderators, the speakers, for doing a very well job done. We owe special debt of gratitude to the resolute audience also. My special thanks to the volunteers and the team of National Institute of Maritime Affairs for their untiring and longish hours for the success of this conference. We are equally grateful to all our vibrant media teams for their splendid work in projecting and promoting the objectives of this conference. We at NIMA are committed to provide a quality research platform that stimulates innovative thoughts on blue economy. And I'd like to assure you all that with the help of our international and national patrons, National Institute of Maritime Affairs will keep on bringing important maritime themes to the front, inshallah. Once again, I am very thankful to all of you for your kind presence. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insight.
Ladies and gentlemen, I request our Honorable Chief Guest, Admiral Retired Shahid Karimullah, Nishane-e-Imtiaz Military, Sitara-e-Jurrat, former Chief of Naval Staff, to address the audience.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Commander Pakistan Fleet and Vice Admiral 𝐒𝐩𝐩𝐲𝐶, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the National Institute of Maritime Affairs for organizing this very important International Maritime Conference coinciding with the Pakistan Navy Premier Initiative PIMEC 2023. You also experience, and I have experienced it so many times, that all conferences and seminars have the least time for the last speaker. And since I became the Chief of Naval Staff, I find myself at every occasion the last speaker. So I have been told that I am very constrained for time, so I will keep myself to a very short speech, and that also based on my personal experience rather than repeating what all the able speakers have already spoken. To start with, thank you very much to all the speakers. You have very ably and with your experience and expertise able to give us, as one gentleman said, a wealth of information. Believe me, I retired in 2005. And since that time, it's very normal and natural that one tends to become stale with the most modern changes. But these papers that I heard today have revived my knowledge, and I'm sure it must have done the same for the entire audience. Thank you very much. Similarly, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me as the chief guest for this particular session. I myself, during my times, had arrange and organize seminars, but believe me, today's arrangements are not only excellent, but they are fabulous. Congratulations to all and Admiral Saeed and especially his organization. I just have to say 2 points. First thing is that the fleet commander, the Vice Admiral Javaid Iqbal, he spoke about the security of the oceans. And he spoke about the Task Force 150 and 151. This is basically, you know, it's an international collaboration of different navies. Basically, it is America and the European navies, and including Japan. And we were asked, Pakistan Navy was asked to join this group and contribute the units. And at that time, I was the Chief of Naval Staff, and my staff, Deputy Chief of Naval Staff Operation was none other than Vice Admiral 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐻 sitting here as a moderator. We had to take permission from the government, and it was not easy. Why? Because of the regional geopolitics and reaction of our neighbors, both East and West. Anyway, we were fortunate with a lot of efforts that we managed to get the permission of the government, and we contributed one of our units to this task force, which I believe is still in practice today. It did a wonderful job in many ways. It brought the soft image and the Pakistan Navy's image to the entire world. The next thing is I would like to quote Mr. Ahsan Malik for his excellent paper. And he mentioned about something that Karachi port has more berths but no storage or less storage, whereas Port Qasim has got less berths and more storage. For the knowledge of audience and Mr. Ahsan Malik, this problem exists for decades. And in my knowledge, in my conclusion is that this is not being resolved just because of the internal politics and self-interest of KPT and Port Qasim, rather more of KPT. And I wish that the Ministry of Communication, Port and Shipping resolve this issue between the two ports for the sake of Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the only two things that I wanted to mention, and I don't want to take any more further time. Thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for souvenir distribution ceremony. I would like to request our honorable chief guest, Admiral Retired Shahid Karimullah, Nishan-e-Imtiaz Military, Sitare-Jurrat, former Chief of Naval Staff, to acknowledge our esteemed speakers for their contribution. Director General, National Institute of Maritime Affairs, Vice Admiral Retired Ahmed Saeed, Hilal-e-Imtiaz Military, is also requested to join him for souvenirs presentation ceremony.